Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news review to discuss. We've got a sign to talk about, a couple of waiver updates, some injury updates, and a couple of trade rumors involving the Anaheim Ducks, Calgary Flames, Chicago Blackhawks, Philadelphia Flyers, and the San Jose Sharks. And we'll go through all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Talk channel. Before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never been able to do this with all of you guys. So don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so we can hit 250 subscribers. Now, as usual, I'll start off today's video by discussing a recent sign that we've had over the past couple of days, and that is the St. Louis Blues. The St. Louis Blues have extended Nathan Walker, who's a left winger, bomb 6 forward. He can definitely play well on a bomb 6 role. He signed a 2-year extension with the St. Louis Blues to remain in St. Louis with an AAV $675,000. So that's a pretty good deal. It's league minimum, so it's not really over expensive contract. Like we said, Walker's a decent bomb 6 forward, can play on the 4th line. So maybe not put up a whole bunch of points, but he can definitely do really well. So far this year, he's only gone into 3 games of NHL action, putting up a goal and a +1 rating. His best year up to date was the past couple of seasons. 2 years ago, he put up 12 points in 30 games. Last year, put up 10 points in 56 games. So he's definitely a really good bomb 6 forward and definitely a serviceable forward. Not someone who's going to get into all the games at the NHL level, but still someone who can definitely be really called upon, especially if there's injuries. So far, the AHL level this year, Walker had 13 goals and 29 points in 30 games, so definitely almost a point per game in the AHL. He's definitely a really good player, so whether he plays the NHL level or AHL level, he's a really good spare forward, and the St. Louis Blues really do like having him. So Walker, I think this is a fantastic deal. It's league minimum, so it's not really a really bad contract for St. Louis Blues. Like I say, he's a good, decent depth forward, and I think this will be a really good move there for the St. Louis Blues to keep a guy like a Walker who can definitely fit as like a bomb 6 forward. So that's a really good move there, in my opinion, for the St. Louis Blues to wind up signing Walker to a new deal. I think that's a really fantastic move there for them. And Walker, who has been a really good bomb 6 forward, in my opinion, should be able to remain a solid bomb 6 forward, whether it be playing bomb 6 minutes at the NHL level or be a call-up option playing in the AHL level over the next couple of years. But that's still a really good job there for St. Louis to retain some of their depth in the forward group. Going over to a quick waiver update here from the past couple of days. On Tuesday, we talked about how Kevin Rooney was placed on waivers. I wasn't expecting him to be claimed given the fact he was just coming off of injuries. He had been dealing with injuries a lot over the past little while. However, he did make a $1.3 million cap hit. It was a decent 4th line forward, but I thought with his cap hit, with his injury history over the past little while, he probably would wind up clearing, and that's exactly what happened. Rooney did clear by the Calgary Flames. I think he was moved to the minors, so not overly surprised that happened, and Rooney's probably going to try and get his game back up in the AHL, so not too surprised that happens. Like I said, he's a decent 4th liner, but $1.3 million coming off of an injury. I don't think there was any takers. Then 2 days ago, we saw Gustav Lindstrom. He placed on waivers by Montreal Canadiens. I thought there was probably a decent chance someone could claim him. He's a good young right shot defenseman, can play 6th or 7th D minutes. He's definitely a decent defensive player, not a prospect at this point in time, but someone who can definitely be a serviceable 3rd pair guy. And he was indeed claimed. The Ducks indeed wound up claiming Gustav Lindstrom. Now, the Ducks do have a little bit of a weaker blue line, especially after moving Jamie Drysdale to the Philadelphia Flyers, so they needed some sort of defensive help, but instead of calling up one of their other players they have in the minors right now, they wound up claiming Lindstrom. So at this point in time with the Ducks defense, I think Lindstrom will definitely be a solid either serve pair defenseman on some nights. Sometimes he could be a healthy scratch, but still, I think Lindstrom will be a really good defenseman there for the Anaheim Ducks, especially if the Ducks wind up continuing to move players before a deadline. I could see them move a guy like Ilya Bushkin on the defensive end before a trade deadline. So if that happens, that's another right shot defenseman they're going to move. So they're going to need a couple of serviceable defensemen to sort of run out the roster for us this season if they do want to move a couple of pieces. And I think Lindstrom could be definitely one of those guys. So that's a really good for the Ducks to acquire him on waivers. And I think Lindstrom will fit in really well either as like a 3rd pair, big right shot defenseman who can definitely help, or as a spare defenseman to come in when they need him to be. So it'll be an interesting thing to watch out for. But Lindstrom's claimed off of waivers by the Ducks. And then yesterday we also saw Chris Wagner be placed on waivers by the Colorado Avalanche. So Wagner started the season on season opening injury reserve. So just like Kevin Rooney, I wouldn't expect him to probably be claimed. Wagner is a decent, at this point in time, more of a spare forward, maybe an AHL forward as well. So I wouldn't expect anyone to claim him. He's not really a major upgrade on any team's forward groups. On top of that, he's just coming off of an injury that cut him out for the entirety of the season up to this point. So I would expect him to probably wind up clearing, just given the fact that he's been injured and he's probably not an upgrade of very many teams' forward groups. So yeah, I'd probably expect Wagner to clear. Maybe like we saw with Zach Sanford, there's a team out there who really desperately needs forward help, who could wind wind up claiming him, but in my opinion, I think Wagner probably winds up clearing. So it'll be interesting to see, but that's the waiver update for the past couple of days. Kevin Rooney, who was on injury reserve, makes over $1 million, wound up clearing for the Calgary Flames. He's back in the minors. Gustav Lindstrom was placed on waivers by the Canadiens. He was claimed by the Ducks, who definitely needs some defensive help, and he's going to play with Anaheim for the next little while. And Colorado is able to get Chris Wagner on waivers, and I would expect him to probably clear given his injury history over the past little while, and also given the fact that he's more of an AHL forward at this point in time. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys go. Going over to the injury update part of the video from the past couple of days, Jack Hughes is currently going to be out week to week with an upper body injury, so it's not really great news, but according to the Devils head coach, it's going to be more of a week to week situation instead of month to month. So that's really good news to see that Hughes sort of wasn't dealt a really bad blow there. He might even be able to make the All-Star game. Not exactly sure if that's going to be a possibility or not, but still, really good stuff there for the New Jersey Devils that they avoid a Hughes injury that's going to keep him out for a couple of months. Tom Wilson and Rasmus Sandin both have upper body injuries and are out day right now for the Washington Capitals, so it's really bad injury updates there. But then we saw a ton of players be cleared to play for game action. First, Pellick with New York Islanders, Joey Anderson with the Chicago Blackhawks, as well as Taylor Radish with the Chicago Blackhawks, Rasmus Kupari with the Winnipeg Jets, Matthew Joseph with the Ottawa Senators, Calgary Flames, and Kevin Rooney, who we said was placed on waivers and cleared, Michael Moline with the Minnesota Wild, Charlie Lindgren with the Washington Capitals, Eric Chernak with the Tampa Bay Lightning, Kyle Burrows with the San Jose Sharks, Anaheim Ducks and John Gibson, Sam Bennett with the Florida Panthers, and then Lohrei and JVR with the Boston Bruins. So lots of players coming back off of injury reserve. And then yesterday we also saw a couple of injury updates. Connor Bedard's jaw injury has been updated. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. That's a horrible bad blow for the Blackhawks, and he's probably going to miss the All-Star game too, so that's an awful blow for Chicago to lose Vladar for that period of time. Then the Anaheim Ducks lost Trevor Zegras to a lower body injury, out for an unknown period of time, and Pavel Mintyukov to an undisclosed injury, out for an unknown period of time. Boston lost Matthew Porcher to a shoulder injury, and Linus Ullmark to a lower body injury. Both are going to be out for an unknown period of time, so that's really bad injury blows there. Casey Cizikas has a lower body injury, out for an unknown period of time. Jeff Skinner has an upper body injury, out for an unknown period of time. Matthew Nice has a leg injury, out for an unknown period of time. Capo Caco has a lower body injury, out for a day-to-day period of time. Ty Emberson has an undisclosed injury and is out week to week. William Carey has an upper body injury and is out week to week, so really bad blows there. But we saw Zach Whitecloud be cleared to play. We saw Jesper Fast be cleared to play, and we saw Ken Korzak be cleared to play. So that's really great news for Golden Knights to get guys like Whitecloud and Korzak back, but still lots of bad injury updates over the past a while. So we got a couple of really good injury updates, seeing guys like JVR, Lohrei, Bennett, Chernak, Joseph, Kupari, Whitecloud all get back on the game action. So that's really good stuff there. But it was also not overly great news to see guys like Capo Caco be out day to day right now. Will Carrier be out week to week, or Jack Hughes be out week to week, or definitely Bedard be out for 6 to 8 weeks. It's a horrible blow for the Chicago Blackhawks and some of the other teams. And hopefully they're not going to be out for an over long period of time and they're able to get back on the closer side of things on their timeline, but still really bad blows there for a couple of teams with the injury bug. And last year, going over to a couple of trade rumors. First, with the Chicago Blackhawks. Freeman's last 32 Thoughts podcast, he was mentioning the Chicago Blackhawks, and there was a couple of things he mentioned about the Blackhawks and what they could do with their roster. One, he said that a guy who could be dealt at the deadline, who a lot of teams could possibly be interested in, would be Jason Dickinson. I don't think that's too much of a surprise, but Dickinson's having a fantastic year in Chicago. Really, ever since he left Vancouver, he's been really back to his old self that he was in Dallas. He's looked really, really good, and he can definitely be a solid, serviceable third or fourth line center for a lot of cup contending teams. So I could definitely see some teams have some interest. Now, he does make a decent amount of cap space. I think Dickinson has like a $2.6 million cap hit. So if the Hawks are able to retain half of his salary, bump his cap hit down to $1.3 million, that would be a really decent cap hit that a lot of teams will do. $1.3 million for the rest of the season and helping in the playoffs as a solid, serviceable third or fourth line center. I think that would be a ton of teams interested. So watch out for Jason Dickinson as a trade chip. We know that the Hawks have a couple of trade chips they could use. Once they get back, Anthony Beauvillier could definitely be a trade chip. Nick Foligno could definitely be a trade chip. There are probably a couple of other guys on this team who could definitely be trade chips. I wonder if they possibly consider dealing Connor Murphy. But Jason Dickinson's going to be another guy we have to watch out for. Like I said, solid, serviceable third or fourth line center on a cup contending team who could definitely really work out well. I'm not exactly sure what the return would be for the Chicago Blackhawks. My guess would probably be a decent like third or fourth round pick. So it wouldn't be an overly high price that they could get for Jason Dickinson, but it's going to be a name we have to watch out for. And I definitely do think with Dickinson being a pending UFA and the Hawks where they are right now, he will definitely be a possible trade candidate. And then Freeman also mentioned that they could be a team who possibly looks at signing Phil Kessel. He makes a really good point here. I would have to agree with him. And he says that Phil Kessel, who's a free agent right now, is still the Ironman streak leader right now. The Hawks, we saw over the past couple of days, acquire Stanford off of waivers, trade for Rem Pitlick. They need some forward help, so Elliot Friedman make a really good suggestion saying that they should sign Kessel. They should try and get him into the lineup, have him play as like a top 6 forward for the time being, and if he can really start to produce really, really well, they can move him at the deadline and get some sort of a return for him. So it will be interesting to see if they could go out and sign Kessel. I'm not saying it's a guarantee and it's definitely going to happen, but definitely that would be a really interesting thing to watch out for. If they do need some forward help, maybe they look to a guy like Phil Kessel. Next, going over to the San Jose Sharks. They were talking about this on the recent Insider Trading video about the San Jose Sharks. They were saying how the Sharks are having an awful season and what could we see about the futures of Tomas Hertl and Logan Couture. Recently, a blog post about which of those two guys could possibly wind up being moved in the not distant future. And according to Pierre LeBrun, apparently it doesn't seem like either one of these two guys are going to be moved in season. What Pierre LeBrun said is that for Hertl, he's currently focused on this season and helping this young core. He doesn't seem to be really inclined to move at this point in time, and he has a full no movement clause, so if he was to be moved, he would have to agree to it, and at this point in time, it doesn't sound like he's going to, so it seems like Tomas Hertl's trade is very unlikely to definitely wind up happening in season. According to Pierre LeBrun, it says that he could wind up revisiting this in the offseason. So according to Pierre LeBrun, it sounds like Hertl is not going to be moved at this point in time in season, but it's quite possibly could be moved in the offseason. So we'll have to watch out for a Hertl trade possibly in the offseason, especially if the Sharks continue to fall the way they have over the course of this year. Couture, he said the same sort of thing. Couture has been injured the entirety of the season, so I'm not sure if there will be a lot of teams who would be really interested in acquiring him in the first place, especially at $8 million cap hits. But according to Pierre LeBrun, Couture is a guy who a lot of teams could have some interest in. It's like a veteran, a second or third line center who could really help a cup contending team. So it would be interesting to see. However, he does have term, which Pierre LeBrun said could be a thing that winds up working against the Sharks' favors. And given the fact that Couture has been injured the entirety of the season, I don't see him being traded in season. So it sounds less and less likely like Hertl and Couture will be dealt at some point before the trade deadline. And I would probably say it's more likely that these two guys are going to be dealt at some point, possibly in the offseason or beyond that. So look out for more trade speculation to pick up between Hertl and Couture, but don't expect a trade between now and the deadline. It sounds like those two are probably going to be waiting until at the very least the offseason for a deal to happen. So don't expect Hertl and Couture to be dealt before a deadline, according to a couple of reports recently from the Insider Trading video. Going over to the Philadelphia Flyers. Also on the Insider Trading video, they were discussing the Philadelphia Flyers, and they said that they could wind up still trying to look to move Walker and Seeler. And I've actually heard this from a couple of people over the past little while. Not exactly sure if it's going to be true or not, but with the Drysdale acquisition, they have a really good, solid top four right now with Sanheim, York, and Drysdale. They also have Ristolainen still on that thing. I know there was a lot of talk about Ristolainen being moved, but with this contract, I really don't see that happening. But with the addition of Drysdale, that could make guys like Walker and Seeler more expendable. And if they weren't already possibly looking at trading those guys, with the Drysdale addition, they could look to move those guys even more. Walker's been a solid top four defenseman all season long for the Philadelphia Flyers. Sealer's been a pretty decent third pair defenseman this year. He's been really good, serviceable third pair D guy. So if you can see both these guys get moved, and I think the Drysdale acquisition makes it a lot more likely. I'm not going to rule out that they possibly could stay. I mean, it's quite possible that Walker or Seeler could wind up signing extensions in Philadelphia. I'm not saying I'm going to rule it out completely, but I think with the Drysdale addition, it's very, very likely that those two are way more likely to be traded than before. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I definitely think that Walker and Seeler are both going to be dealt at some point. I think Walker is definitely a lot more likely, and I could definitely see the Flyers get like a second round pick and a really good prospect for him. I definitely don't think it'll be costing a first, but I could definitely see a second and a really good prospect be costing. I think Sealer's probably going to cost like a third round pick and maybe something else. So it'll be interesting to see if the Flyers do anything before the deadline, but I definitely think with the addition of Drysdale to their defensive core, they really don't need Walker and Seeler anymore for the time being, and I think those two will get moved at some point. Then going over to the Calgary Flames, I've seen this mentioned a little bit over the past little while. Could we see Markstrom be dealt by the Calgary Flames? I definitely think it's a possibility. Markstrom's been a fantastic goaltender for the Calgary Flames, but there's been a lot of talk over the past year that they want to try and move down Vladar, who's in the first year, I think, of a 2-year extension that he signed last year. Vladar's looked really, really good over the past little while. They wanted to sign him as to be the backup, but Wolf's been absolutely phenomenal in the AHL, and they really want to try and get him into more game action, which has led to a lot of Vladar speculation. And a lot of people have reported them trying to consider moving Vladar, but another one that has not been overly mentioned a whole bunch, but has been coming up. Even guys like Elliot Friedman and a couple of other people have mentioned it at least, and that is Jacob Markstrom. Could the Flames consider moving Jacob Markstrom and keep Vladar and Wolf as their tandem? Now, this would be a really difficult trade to pull off. Markstrom makes a $6 million cap hit, and that's a really, really high cap hit for a team to take on, especially in season. But I've seen a couple of people say that a team like New Jersey especially could go after a guy like Jacob Markstrom. He's making this year plus 2 more seasons, they think, it's $6 million, has a full no movement clause, so he would have to approve a trade. But definitely, I think there is a possibility. Markstrom's a really, really good starter, and I could see him still try and go after a Markstrom and Wolf starter and move Vladar. But maybe they try and do like a tandem with Wolf and Vladar for the next little while until Wolf is able to grab the reins as the full-time starter, and they move Markstrom. It will definitely help their cap situation, given the fact that Markstrom makes $6 million, so getting his cap hit off the book would definitely be interesting. I know Jersey's definitely been linked to Markstrom a lot. I do wonder if there was maybe a couple of other teams who sort of linked to Markstrom. I do wonder about Carolina. Could Edmonton? I know that's really, really quite impossible given the fact that those two are Alberta rivals, but could Edmonton have some interest in him? Like we said, could we see Carolina have some interest? Is there a couple of other teams out there who could definitely have interest? I'm not sure if Toronto would really be willing to pay that much money for a goaltender, but still, it'll be interesting to see. I think Markstrom could wind up being a deal. Not sure if it would happen at the deadline or possibly in the offseason, but definitely, I think Markstrom may wind up being moved. I think Vladar is still the more likely candidate to be moved for the Calgary Flames, but I think Markstrom has to be considered at this point in time as being a possible trade candidate, and it's not going to be easy to trade him, and he'll definitely have to consent to a trade given the fact that he has a no movement clause. But still, I think this is a pretty good trade option here for the Calgary Flames. They'll definitely be able to get a haul for Markstrom if they were to trade him. I mean, Markstrom at this point in time, I think, could definitely command like a second round pick and a decent prospect. So sort of like John Gibson, it'll be a difficult trade to do, especially in season, but if the Flames were inclined to do so, they could definitely trade Markstrom. I think there would be a ton of takers for a starting goaltender like Markstrom. So we'll have to wait, and it'll be interesting to see if that happens. And lastly here, going over to the Anaheim Ducks. After the Gauthier edition and their forward group being stocked up even more, I mean, you have Gauthier, you have Cherry, you have Carlson, and Zegras, McTavish. You're going to get probably another top 6 forward in the draft, so you're probably going to get a lot of top-end talent. But a lot of people have been saying with the addition of Cutter Gauthier, could the Anaheim Ducks be willing to move Trevor Zegras? Now, I think that's a little bit premature. I don't think they're willing to shopping him, but that was even talked about in the Insider Trading video, how they said that there's definitely been some conversations around Trevor Zegras. It doesn't sound like the Anaheim Ducks are really inclined on moving him right now, but they could wind up making a move to wind up dealing Trevor Zegras. He could be a guy who's available at this point in time. It doesn't sound like it at this point, but I definitely think he could wind up becoming available. Now, they would definitely want a massive return if they were to trade Zegras. I know there were some possible trade options in the offseason when Zegras was having contract negotiations and they weren't going overly well with the Anaheim Ducks. So maybe they wind up dealing this young kid. Now, there would definitely have to be a huge deal. I was thinking like a first-round pick, a high-level prospect, and probably something else if they were to move Zegras. So it would definitely have to be a really, really big trade package in order for the Ducks to trade Zegras. But I mean, they already have a solid top 6. Would that make Zegras expendable? I think it's quite possible, especially if the Ducks are going to get another top-end young talent in this year's draft. So it will be interesting to see. I'm not saying it's a guarantee Zegras gets moved, and I'm not even saying it's very likely, but I'm saying that Zegras' name has been mentioned a couple of times since the Gauthier trade in trade discussions, and I do wonder if the Ducks, with the addition of Gauthier and possibly another young player at the draft, do they wind up considering moving Zegras? Is it possible that they do wind up considering trading him, or is it very unlikely? And is this just a speculation that probably won't happen? But it's going to be interesting to see. I definitely could see Zegras wind up being moved. It's definitely going to take a huge package, like I said, but if Zegras were to become available, I would think that all 31 teams would have some interest in trying to acquire Trevor Zegras. So it'll be interesting to see, but definitely going to be interesting to see. I definitely do think that Zegras could wind up being expendable with the addition of Gauthier, but I'm not saying it's a guarantee he'll get traded. I think they would probably rather keep him, but if the right deal comes along, maybe the Ducks do wind up trading Zegras to another team. So it'll be interesting to see, but that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. Do you think there's a possibility Zegras gets moved? If so, where do you think will be the best fit for him? What do you think would have to be a trade package? And do you see Zegras possibly being moved, or is it more likely he stays in Anaheim? Do you see Markstrom being moved by the Calgary Flames? trades. Is that a possibility, or is it more likely that Markstrom stays and Vladar gets moved? Definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. Do you think the Flyers will move Walker and Seeler? I think it's a lot more likely now after the Drysdale acquisition. I'd love to hear what you guys think, and if so, what do you think they could possibly get for Walker and Seeler? Do you see Hertl and Couture being moved in season? Corner reports, it doesn't sound like they're going to move it in season. I can definitely see why they would probably not be moved in season, but I definitely think there would definitely be possible off-season trades for San Jose Sharks, so that'll be an interesting situation to watch out for in the off-season. Do you think they'll be moving in the off-season too? Do you see the Blackhawks signing Phil Kessel or trading Josh Dickinson? I'm not sure about Phil Kessel, that's a little bit of a stretch, but I could see them trying to add another forward like that, so I wouldn't rule it out. Jason Dickinson, I think, is definitely a guy who's going to be gone at the deadline, a solid third-line, fourth-line center who could definitely help make up containing team, so I think he'll definitely be moved. What do you think he could be moved to, and what do you think would be the asking price? Definitely love to hear your thoughts on that down in the comments. And what do you think about the injury updates, waiver updates, and the signing that happened over the past couple of days? Definitely love to hear your thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. But that's what we're going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. I would have never been able to do this well with you guys, so don't forget to subscribe so we can hit 250 subscribers. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so if you check that out, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.